Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending this session, K-5 Literacy Strategies at Home. This is part of our elementary family series, Successful Strategies for Distance Learning. And my name is Melody Sweet, and I'm a family literacy specialist with Faribault Public Schools. So today we are going to be going over reading volume, reading widely, reading aloud, and then the value of vocabulary games. And our hope for this session is that you will take away some ideas that you can practice with your family at home. And these are all just recommendations, so you don't need to take all of these. Just whatever is going to work for you and your family. So during distance learning, your child is spending less time with the classroom teacher and their classmates, and they also might be spending less time reading. So in order to continue to help your child grow their vocabularies and grow as readers, we're going to recommend some strategies and fun games. And before we dive in, we just want to go over teacher and family expectations, because we want you to know that we don't expect you to be a teacher at this time. And so while teachers are providing rigorous, intensive, and standard-based instruction, the family's role is really to provide love, bonding, and connectedness, and fun games for their child. A family can be supportive of the teacher's instruction, but the family by no means has to be the teacher. So first, we are going to be going over reading volume. And in this series, we're just going to go over kind of some general points about literacy, and it's by no means exhaustive since literacy is such a huge field. But reading volume means the number of minutes your child spends reading texts, and that accounts for your reading volume. And why is reading important? So reading builds general knowledge and reading proficiency, and this is especially important as your child moves through the K through 12 education system. When your child reads independently, they are exposed to a greater array of knowledge and a richer vocabulary. When your child reads, they're exposed to rare words, which are words that occur in reading, but they don't generally occur in our common language. And rare words actually include many of the academic concepts taught in school. So for example, the word cells doesn't often occur in our common language when we're just talking to each other, but it is going to appear frequently in a science class. So the more your child is expanding their reading and the more reading they're doing, the more rare words they're going to know, and then it's going to help them with their academics. And then students who read extra outside of school perform better on standardized tests. And actually everything counts. It could be magazines, newspapers, sports journals, joke books, comic books, and fiction. And they've actually found that things like joke books and comic books actually contain more rare words than just like your standard fiction. And then as your child progresses through the education system, and especially before they're about to go off for college, they're going to have a lot of standardized tests they need to complete. And standardized tests especially test on rare words. So the more reading your child can do, it's likely that they're going to perform better on those tests. So a discussion question, reading has been decreasing. So in 2016, only 16% of students reported reading a book or a magazine for pleasure. But in 1976, 60% of students reported reading for pleasure. Why do you think this is? All right, we're gonna move on. So we just wanna quickly touch on the relationship between reading volume and achievement. So you might be thinking that in order for your child to have a large reading volume, they need to read for hours and hours and hours every day, and that's just not true. So you can look at the chart. Students who ranked in the 80th percentile of their class actually only read books for about 15 minutes a day outside of their schoolwork. So that would be reading for pleasure. And you can see that their words read per year were 1,146,000. A student who ranked in the 98th percentile read for 65 minutes a day outside of class, and they scored they read 4,358,000 words per year. But if you look down the chart, a student who scored in the 30th percentile only read for about 2 minutes a day outside of class, gaining 106,000 words read per year. So you can see that, even if you can get your student to read 15 minutes a day outside of class, that's going to significantly increase the words read per year for them. So why is reading important during distance learning? So right now, teachers are focusing on live teaching, and this can make it really challenging for teachers to assign reading because students aren't reading in front of them, and it can be really hard to manage. So in a normal elementary classroom, students are actually reading every day. Students are given time each day to read a book of their choice for pleasure. And this is time set apart from the normal class activities where students go off and have their own quiet time. And it's usually called sustained silent reading, or SSR. And then finally, a daily habit of reading a lot and reading widely is going to move your child forward. So you want to encourage your child to read daily. And remember, it doesn't have to be for hours and hours. It can be 15 or 30 minutes a day. And let them read anything they're interested in, and of course with your approval. And we really want to encourage that because reading really shouldn't be a chore. We want students to find topics and books and styles that they're most interested in, and then to be able to enjoy that. So a discussion question for you all is, during distance learning, how has your child's experience of reading been? Are they reading a little? Are they reading a lot? Not at all? So here are some action steps you can take to get your child to increase their reading volume, or the amount of time they spend reading text each day. So you can talk with your teacher or librarian to identify reading materials. Every student is in a grade level. They're going to have grade level materials that work best for them. The materials shouldn't be too challenging or too easy. And then based off of the recommendations that the teacher or the librarian gives you, let your child browse among those and then select what they want to read. Because again, reading should be for their pleasure and it shouldn't be as a chore. And then next, know your reading resources. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you a bunch of different resources, digital reading resources. And then read with your children. So reading with your child can be really special because it creates a shared experience and allows time for bonding. And that's another way that you can get your child to read more each day, is by reading with them. Ask your child what they're reading for fun, and then just simple questions. Are they enjoying it? Would they recommend it to a friend? What's the book about? Do they like the main character? That can be a really great way to just get a conversation going with your child and kind of learn about what their interests or how they think about the world. Ask your child what they're reading for school. Where are they learning? What books are they reading? Is it difficult or easy for them? And this can be a really good conversation because if you're finding that a book is too easy or too difficult for your child, it's something that you can bring up with their classroom teacher. And then finally, model reading and talk about your reading in front of your child. And you can read anything, newspapers, magazines, but just each day talk with your child about how you read every day and then what you're reading. And you can serve as a really great model for your child to also kind of cultivate that reading habit. So here are some of the digital reading resources I talked about. So Unite for Literacy is a great one. It offers a large collection of books and they're narrated in over 15 languages. Storyline Online is an award-winning children's literacy program featuring famous actors reading books and illustrated videos. Mrs. P's Magic Story Library is another great collection of online books. It also has games on there. Buckham Memorial Library. So right now they're offering browse and go appointments, but they also have an app called Libby, and that allows you to borrow and read ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines online, and you don't have to go to the library to check them out. And then there's the International Children's Digital Library. So again, this is a resource that's going to offer children's books in a variety of languages. And then kind of a different resource is NPR's Wow in the World, which is a podcast for kids and their grown-ups, and it's hosted by Mindy Thomas and Guy Raz about stories about technology, science, and innovation. So there's a lot of really great resources out there, and this is just a small collection of them. So now we're going to move into reading widely. So reading different genres is going to help your child build knowledge. If you think about the way that school is structured, your student has an English class, they have a science class, a math class. And so just in that same way, we want to encourage students to kindly read widely across genres to build their knowledge. And this ultimately is going to help them in school and in their lives. So you can see here is a genre wheel. And this is just going over all of the different kinds of genres that are out there. And if you find that your child only is wanting to stick to one of them, you can kind of encourage them to branch out or suggest new materials. You can see in lived lives, we have biography, autobiography, memoir. Kind of a newer form would be a graphic novel, a wiki, fan fiction, that's usually online. Your traditional character and plot is going to be historical fiction, realistic fiction, or mystery. There's science fiction and fantasy, and then there's more of the technical writing, like news articles or advertisements, comparative essays. And then spoken word, a lot of students are interested in kind of more of the music and poetries and plays. And then there's fables, folktales, myths, and legends. And so all of these are really great genres for them to explore, and one isn't better than the other. So the value of reading widely is that it builds knowledge about the physical, social, and biological world. So again, it's more all-encompassing. You're not just focusing on one thing. So with narrative texts, which are more of like the fiction, historical fiction, memoir, those really help because they build your child's imagination. And they also can encourage social and emotional development because let's say that your child is reading a book, and in that book, the character fails and triumphs. Your child gets to see how exactly that takes place, but they do so from a safe distance. And then they can imagine how they could handle that situation without actually having to experience it. And then research shows that reading narratives can actually alleviate loneliness. And during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic, students are more lonely than usual because they don't have their classmates or their teachers here in person with them. And then finally, narrative texts are great for reading for pleasure and enjoyment. And now for informational texts are really important because they supply children with knowledge about events and phenomena. So for example, we don't necessarily have volcanoes here in Rice County, but a narrative text is going to bring an abstract concept like a volcano to the forefront. Informational texts also help to build children's interests, which become aspirations and eventually careers. And that's why reading widely can especially be important. The more text your child reads, the more opportunities they might see for a career or one of the things that they're most passionate about that can become a large part of their life. Reading informational texts is going to help them build real life reading skills because as adults, we read a lot of nonfiction and informational texts for our personal and work lives. And then the more background information a reader has, the stronger their comprehension skills are likely to be. So informational text can really help build good background information that's going to help students to succeed in school. So now we have another discussion question for you. Do your children read widely across genres, or do they tend to stick to a series or a genre? All right. So the value of reading aloud. So reading aloud can serve to build your child's knowledge and develop their social and emotional skills. So the benefits of reading aloud as a family, there are many. So they fall into both academic and social and emotional benefits. So within academic benefits, reading aloud as a family can help the development of your child's vocabulary. It can also help improved listening comprehension, and this is something that is tested in schools. Achievement on reading tests will likely increase. And then young children can learn that print on the page carries meanings, and they can also learn that stories evolve. It's not just pictures and text on a page. Exposure to text a reader may not undertake on their own. So a huge benefit of reading aloud is that if your child is sticking to just one genre, maybe that text that you read aloud as a family, you branch out and read something new. And then your child will get exposed to that new type of text. And then finally, reading requires practice and not just instruction. So during distance learning, children might not be getting enough practice. And so reading aloud as a family is a great way for your child to practice. And your child can even practice reading aloud to you or reading aloud to a sibling. It doesn't just have to be you reading to the child. And then finally, the social and emotional benefits of reading aloud as a family is that it's going to help young children develop self-regulation skills, like sitting quietly and exercising patience when someone else is talking. Teens are also going to benefit from a shared experience with you. And it opens up a lot of opportunities for conversations for you to have it with your teen and to kind of see what they think about things, how they see the world. And then finally, it promotes bonding and close relationships that are essential to a family unit. So some tips for reading aloud are to share your personality. So you can share your enthusiasm with your child and help them get really excited about the text. So to do this, you can use funny voices, sound effects, or gestures. Ask questions as you're reading. So you can ask questions about the plot, the characters, and even where the words on the page are. So maybe your child is learning the word rough in school, and you read that, you can ask them where they see it on the page. You can also preview the text beforehand, so you know what's coming, and then plan your read aloud accordingly. So you might know the places to read really slow and the places to speed up and read really fast according to whatever is happening in the book. And then finally, allow children to take turns reading. So, especially for children in grades K-3, they can read to their sibling. And this can be really effective for children who are still learning the alphabet and their vocabulary. And read alouds can be incorporated into your daily routine, and you can even make them a habit. And this is really good because then every single day your child is getting a read aloud from you, and that's going to help expand both the reading volume that they do and the reading widely, which is the genres that they're getting exposed to. So finally, we're going to be going over the value of vocabulary games. So memorizing word lists is not very useful, but playing vocabulary games can be a helpful alternative, and it's a great way for you to spend time as a family. So we're going to offer some recommendations about vocabulary games that you can play at home with your family. So first we want to go over the 5 steps of knowing vocabulary. So the first step would be a student saying, I can define this word. The second step would be them saying, I can use it correctly. Third, I know multiple meanings of the word. Fourth, I can use the word with accuracy and precision. And fifth, I can use the word in conversation and in writing. So those are kind of the 5 steps of knowing vocabulary. So you can see that if you just memorize vocabulary words, it's actually not a very good measure of how well a student actually knows their words. Because again, you want to reach stage 5 where you can use that word in conversation and in writing. So the importance of vocabulary, vocabulary refers to the words of a language and their associated meaning. So just like we discussed in the previous slide. And a person's vocabulary develops across their lifetime. I know I am learning new words all the time. A child's vocabulary is a solid predictor of their reading comprehension and their achievement. So again, the wider their vocabulary and the stronger the vocabulary, the better they are to do in school and on standardized tests. And then vocabulary represents a web of knowledge that the learner possesses. And the more extensive this web is, the more likely new ideas will stick. So just for example, going back to that word cells, cells can be traced back to the word biology, which is the study of life. So your vocabulary is going to become kind of like a schema. So you can learn to connect words in something like a web. And then for this reason, it's really important that children continue to read and expand their vocabularies during distance learning. Especially right now when they might be getting less instruction than they're used to, they're reading less in class than they're used to, or they might not be reading at all. And then there's, of course, very increased use of screen time right now. So some recommended vocabulary games and activities that we have for you are, for example, board games that rely on word knowledge. So some of these are really popular, like Scrabble, Balderdash, and Pictionary. Those are really great ways to incorporate vocabulary. Anagrams is where you use letter tiles to form long words, and then you can let your children form additional words with those same letter tiles and see how many they can come up with. Guess the covered word. Write a word your child is learning on a piece of paper, and then use another piece of paper to cover the word. Give your child the category the word falls under, and then reveal the word one letter at a time and see how long it takes for your child to figure it out. There's also the game 20 questions, which is pretty popular. So you can declare either animal, vegetable, or mineral, or another way to play it is to declare person, place, or thing. And then you allow your child to ask up to 20 yes or no questions to try to deduce what the thing is. So the game requires deductive reasoning because players need to be asking the right questions to get the right answers. And then just some tips we have is know the vocabulary words that your child is learning in school. And you can contact the teacher if you need to, and then incorporate those words into your vocabulary games, because that's another opportunity for you to partner in your child's learning, and then for you to help your child really understand the vocabulary more. So some of the key takeaways from today is that reading requires practice and not just instruction. So even though your child may not be in school right now, it's really important that they continue reading widely and reading every single day so that they're expanding their vocabulary and they're not losing some of the skills and knowledge that they've learned. You also want to encourage your child to read every day. And it can be anything: books, magazines, newspapers, joke books. And remember, they don't have to read for hours and hours every day. It can just be a simple 30 minutes a day of reading outside of their class time. Encourage your child to read a variety of genres. And then if they're reluctant, these are the genres that you can include in your read alouds as a family. And then plan these read alouds into your daily routine. And even just a few minutes a day counts, and it's a great bonding activity for you and your family. Utilize the digital literacy resources. There are some in this presentation, but you can also probably find a lot more online. And then vocabulary games are a great way for your child to practice and expand their vocabulary and for you to bring your families together. And then it's also a great way to partner with your child's education and kind of learn the vocabulary words that they're learning and incorporate these into your games. And then finally, rereading books can be a really great way to develop fluency, especially among your younger children. So if you have a child that always wants to read the same book, that's actually great. And thank you all so much for attending this session. We hope that you got at least a few skills that you can take back to your family out of it. And just remember that these are all recommendations, and what works for one family isn't going to work for another family. So you don't need to take everything out of this presentation. It can just be maybe one or two things.